karate expert, a heroin kingpin, and the Bonnano family's favorite hitman. Tommy Pitera wasn't just a soldier in the mafia. He was a living nightmare. In today's episode, we discover how his Japanese killing techniques made him the most dangerous man on the streets of Brooklyn, and what finally brought him down. Thomas Pitera was born in 1954 in the heart of Brooklyn, an era dominated by raw street power. As a child, Tommy was far from the menacing figure he would later become. He was thin, lacked confidence, and suffered from a slight speech impediment, combined with a high-pitched voice. This made him a constant target for bullies. The pain and humiliation he endured left deep scars. It is said that this was the reason he hated being mocked, and in the future, anyone who dared to laugh at his voice found themselves in mortal danger. The turning point came when he won a scholarship to study martial arts in Japan. In Tokyo, he underwent a grueling 12-hour-a-day training regimen. He didn't just learn how to fight, he adopted a monastic lifestyle. He bowed before matches and maintained intense self-discipline. When he returned to New York 2 years later, he wasn't little Tommy anymore. He returned as a martial arts master with a black belt and a cold, piercing stare that terrified even the toughest street thugs. In the 1970s and 80s, the Bonnano crime family was one of the most violent in New York, and Pitera caught the attention of the bosses through his physical prowess and silent efficiency. He began working under Anthony Spiro, the family's consigliere. Pitera stood out as an extraordinary soldier. While other mobsters spent their time in nightclubs, bragging about their power, Pitera stayed in the shadows. He continued to observe Japanese customs and lived a reserved lifestyle, far from the flashiness that defined figures like John Gotti. He didn't seek luxury. Instead, he dedicated his time to training and studying military strategy. The name, Tommy Karate, became synonymous with cold professionalism. He was the man you called when you wanted someone to vanish without a trace and without raising any alarm on the streets. For Pitera, murder wasn't just a job, it was a dark scientific obsession. While convicted of 6 murders, the FBI believes he was responsible for over 60 deaths. Pitera didn't just assassinate his rivals. He studied forensic medicine to understand how to dispose of bodies with maximum efficiency. He set up dismemberment rooms and safehouse bathtubs, using techniques he had perfected. During a search of his home, the FBI was stunned to find a massive library containing not just military strategy books, but forensic textbooks on luminol, the chemical used to detect blood, showing he actively learned how to sanitize crime scenes. He was so meticulous that he would pull the victim's teeth to prevent dental identification. He buried the remains at the Brookfield landfill in Staten Island, a site so cluttered with remains that investigators had to use bulldozers and archaeological equipment for months to recover his victims. Despite his image as a disciplined warrior, Pitera ran a massive heroin distribution network in Brooklyn. He lived a life of extreme inner contradiction. On one hand, a man who worshipped physical excellence and discipline. On the other, a dealer of a drug that destroys lives. The drug money made him one of the most powerful men in the Bonnano family, but also one of the most dangerous. Amidst this madness, another side of him emerged. Pitera was a highly talented painter. He created detailed portraits and serene landscapes, a chilling contrast to the hands that spent their days involved in executions and drug trafficking. He didn't hesitate to kill close friends or partners if he suspected disloyalty, and in one case he murdered a partner's wife just to send a message of absolute power. Pitera's downfall began when the FBI realized that a prolific serial killer was operating under the guise of the mafia. Agent Jim Kostler led the hunt, recruiting terrified informants who realized Pitera was a ticking time bomb. His own crew began to fear they would be the next to end up in a plastic bag in Staten Island. During the surveillance, agents uncovered the sheer scale of Pitera's madness. In 1990, the hunt culminated in a dramatic operation where he was finally apprehended. The myth of the invincible Tommy Karate began to crumble as investigators exposed his graveyard in Staten Island, which earned the gruesome nickname Tommy's House. The 1992 trial was one of the most fascinating things in New York history. The prosecution portrayed Pitera as a monster and demanded the death penalty. the first time since the reinstatement of the death penalty in the US that it had been sought for a mafia member. The evidence was overwhelming, and the jury was exposed to his tools and chilling methods of disposal. פיטרה escaped execution by a single vote, and he was sentenced to multiple life terms without the possibility of parole. Today he remains locked in a tiny cell in one of the world's most secure prisons. He continues to paint behind bars, isolated from the streets he once terrorized, leaving behind a legacy of fear, Japanese discipline, and unprecedented brutality.